And begin when you're ready.
Okay, so my first witness, I'd like to call the petitioner, Maya Thelma Jones. Okay, and how do you support yourself?
I received VA compensation for my service-connected injuries.
Okay, and how do you know the respondent, Mr. Dunbar?
I previously dated him.
Okay, and how long were you in a dating relationship?
From 2021 up until March 1st of this year, 2023.
Did you give birth to any children?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and what is the age and name of that child?
Gianni 1.
He's 1. Do you have any other children?
I do.
And what's the name and age of that child?
His name is Vicky and he's 5 years old.
Okay, and does he have any special needs?
Yes, he's autistic.
Okay, and did the respondent for a period of time live with you and the two children?
Yes, he did.
Okay, and could you give me the dates he did?
So from about the end of June 2021 up until March 1st of 2023.
I would like to, as a respondent, legitimated the child Gianni.
No.
To your knowledge, is there a pending legitimation in DeKalb County?
Yes.
You filed an answer, but there has been no formal adjudication of him being the child's legal father at this time.
No.
I would like to draw your attention to March 1st of 2023. Could you explain to the court what happened on that date?
Yes, ma'am. So the day prior we had an argument. And that same day he told me to commit suicide and give him custody of our son. He also started to bring up my trauma in relation to my father not being in my life, and also the fact that I was sexually assaulted in order to get like an answer out of me. So then obviously it trickled into the next day. That day, that February 28th, I reached to some people that he said are the only people in the world that know him. It was one person that is 2 people that he says only know him. And one of the people that I reached out to ask, hey, like, is there just something I'm doing wrong? Like, how did you know this person? Like, how did they grow up? Just asking questions. So I went back to him and I talked to him about it, and he got upset. He stormed out. And he's like, oh, I know who you talked to, yada, yada, yada. So he called her and she said whatever she said to him. And as a result, he was upset up until March 1st, the next day, into the next day. Didn't ask me what happened, none of that. Just straight off of whatever she had to say. At the time I was pregnant with our son, with another child. And into the next day, this argument continued. That's when he kept saying, if you talk to me, I'm going to go to jail. And I was like, but like, okay, if you're that upset, you probably need to remove yourself. So that is when I went in the kitchen. He just kept going back and forth. I went in the kitchen. I got a garbage bag. I walked to the room and I was like, hey, like, it's time for you to go. So I started packing a bag. And then I went back in there. And that's when he came from behind and grabbed me by my neck. And then he released me. So he grabbed me as in choking me, and then he let me go. And that's when I ran out of the house and I went and called the police. As I came back towards the door, I could hear him taking his cards, like a bunch of cards that he had, and just dumped them on the floor, trying to like stage a scene of whatever he thought he was going to do. And after that, I met the police up front. They asked him where he brought my youngest son, which is Gianni. They asked him, hey, where's the other child? He said, I don't give a F about him. That's not my son. And he left my special needs son locked in the apartment building.
Okay, I want to go back. So you had an argument prior to him choking you on March 1st.
Yeah, so we had an argument the night of February 28th.
Okay, all right. So, but it was on March 1st that did he make any threats while he was choking you?
So he said that he would end us all. He said, you're always threatening to leave. This is March 28th. He said, you're always threatening to leave. You're always saying you're going to leave. If you leave, I'll just end us all. And that's when he went to go pick up his weapon.
What kind of weapon was that?
It's like an assault rifle.
He's also a veteran?
Yes.
And he carries an assault weapon? He has an assault weapon in the home? Or
Several.
Did? Okay. Okay. Did he point that weapon towards you or the kids?
No. So he just said he got it. That's when he started to like load it and he cocked it, and then yeah.
And what did you do when he did that?
I went and I called my counselor because we had a meeting anyways, and I was just telling her like everything that was going on.
And then did you also call the police?
No, I did not, because he came and was like, "What are you doing? Why are you on the phone with her? Why are you doing this? Who are you talking to? What are you saying?" Like he came and literally sat there to see what I was saying to my counselor.
Okay, then what happened?
After that, he left. I don't know where he went. I don't know what he did. But then he came back like the next day, which was March 1st.
Okay, and what happened on that date?
That's the day where I told him, I was like, "Hey, like, what's going on? Like, why are you so upset?" And he's just like, "You're so stupid. You called these people and you betrayed me. You told them that I did this to you and you sent them pictures." And I was like, "Yeah, because I'm trying to figure out, like, why are you acting like this? Like, the stuff that you say, and because I'm not giving you that response that you're looking for, you're bringing up my sexual assaults that occurred in the military, also the sexual assault that his friend sexually assaulted me himself, and like."
Okay, I just want to focus on the violence between you and Mr. Dunbar. Okay, yeah, I could see that you're upset about this. So you were talking a little bit more about he came back, you said on March 28th, and this is when
No,
you
no, no, this
continued.
was February. It was February that the first argument started, and then it carried on into March 1st.
Okay. So the choking then, that didn't occur on March 1st, that occurred on the 28th of February?
No, it occurred on March 1st.
When did, and what date did he grab the weapon?
February 28th.
At any time, where were you living at the time?
We were living in Woburn, Massachusetts.
Okay. And after the events on March 1st, did you file a police complaint, a complaint with the police?
Yes, I ran out of the house and I called them, and they stayed on the phone with me until the police arrived, like, into our building.
Okay, so was this after you concluded your call with your counselor?
Yeah, so this was the next day. She was just like, make sure you have a safety plan in place. And we kind of created what a safety plan would look like in the event that something did escalate. And she just like encouraged me to just leave. Like she was just like, you just gotta go. Like I don't know how to tell you. Like I had literally just got there like a couple of days before because I got out of the army. And she was just like, obviously cost of living here is a lot different from where you used to live. So, you need to look at your resources, but you do need to leave. And so she pointed me into the direction of some resources that could possibly help should something happen.
Okay, and what caused you to call the police on March 1st?
Because, well, I have my phone in my hand, and normally he takes my phone and it doesn't end until whatever domestic violence and abuse doesn't end until he decides that it ends. So I ran out of the house and I had my phone, and that's I finally could call them.
The police.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and then when they arrived, what was he arrested?
Yes. Well, eventually, yes, he was arrested.
And what was he charged with?
Domestic violence against a family, domestic violence and assault against a family member, and like improper storage of firearms.
During the time that he was incarcerated, to your knowledge, was he ever released on bail?
Yes, they called me like the next morning and was like, "Hey, we're just alerting you that he is getting out." So that was March 2nd. They called me and like, "Hey, he's getting out." And then they just kind of gave further instructions and said some like a victim advocate would be reaching out.
Did you also file for order of protection in the state of Massachusetts?
No, they told me that there was bail conditions that were already set in place. They said I could get a restraining order, but they said that because I was moving, they didn't want to set a hearing and then I not show up. So they told me to file where I was moving to, and I did that. But Florida said that they have no jurisdiction because it didn't occur in Florida. So I told my victim advocate this information, and she said she was going to see what else we could do. She told me I could come back to Massachusetts, but she obviously stated that's not what she would, I guess, the best option. So she waited a while and then she contacted me, and that's when she said because he kept doing more stuff. He kept having people reach out to me, like, despite the bail conditions. He kept calling my ex-husband and told him a bunch of lies and stuff like that. So that's when I told her, like, all of this stuff. And that's when she recommended that I try to figure out, like, what county he lives in. And then I figured it out. And that's when I came to DeKalb County, like, reached out to you guys.
To follow the order of protection in Georgia and DeKalb County.
Yes.
And you currently live in Orlando, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, before all this incident occurred, had there been prior incidents where he's attacked you?
Yes.
All right, I'd like to draw your attention to a couple distinct dates. Could you please, let's start with the oldest one. What happened on December 15th of 2022?
October?
Yes, I'm sorry, October 15th, 2022.
So October 15th is where we were
Oh, hold on. And where did this occur?
in Muskogee County, Georgia.
Okay.
So October 15th, that's when we were arguing because he was trying to force this girl that he knows to marry his friend from Africa, in order for him to gain citizenship and stay, like, in the United States. So I was like, hey, like, you know, I just feel like you should just if that's what they decide to do, that's what they do. But I don't feel like that's the right thing to force on somebody because that's what you want them to do. But again, it's not my business, not my situation. But I was just like, from my perspective, I don't feel like that's right. And then he was trying to use our son as a means to facilitate them doing this by creating a fake invitation to bring his friend to America to send to the embassy there in Nigeria.
Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt you. What I'd like you to focus on is the acts of violence that occurred, not necessarily at this point the other conversations unrelated to the violence.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. So on this day, that's where we came home. We were at the grocery store when this conversation took place. We came home, the argument continued, and that's when he went to the car and I shut the door, I chained the door, and I told him to just go chill out. Don't come in here, like, stay away. Until he cooled off, because he threw the wagon, like the wagons that you pull, that you put the stuff in that everybody has. He took that and he threw it.
The wagon that the food wagon?
Yeah, like the wagons that you put stuff in that you kind of like pull, like everybody's has them now, like to get the groceries out the car and stuff like that.
I see. Okay.
It was folded up, like it wasn't a square, and he took it and he threw it. And then he had said that he was going to shoot the entire house up. So when he went to the car, I said, hey, yeah, no, stay away. I locked the door. I chained the door. He unlocked the door, but it was still chained. And he was like, I want to get some clothes. And I was like, okay, I'll bring you the clothes, but there's 2 kids in here. And the way that you're acting, like, your conduct is not appropriate. And like, this is not something I want to deal with. So I got him the clothes, brought him to the door. He said, those are not the clothes that I want to wear. That is not what I'm wearing. He just kept going on and on. And I told him, I said, if you break this door, I'm calling the police. If you break the door, I'm going to call the police. And that's when he just broke the door down, and like the frame of the door along with the little chain came off.
Okay. And were you able to call the police?
No, I was not able to call the police.
Why not?
I honestly don't know.
Okay. And did you take any photos of that door?
I did.
Okay. And if I could, I'd like to bring up petitioner's exhibit number 5. Is this the photograph of the door that you took on October 15th?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it a fair and accurate depiction of the door at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you make any alterations to this photograph?
No, ma'am.
I'd like to publish this and offer it into evidence.
Counsel, any objection?
No objection.
Okay. And could you explain to me what it looks like the door? Could you just explain what that gray color is surrounding the door?
So that's the part of the door that was ripped. Like, so the off to the left, there's a frame, and that's the piece of the frame that belonged there that he took off when he barged through the door.
Okay, so he was outside, he forced his way in, and the chain pulled the frame off the door, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did he damage any other property on that date?
There was just a dent like on the patio from where he threw the wagon.
Okay. And did he make any other threats to you or to your children on that date?
No.
After he got in, what happened?
So he left. He went to like Atlanta to do whatever. I don't know. He went to Atlanta, and then he eventually came back, and that was kind of like the end of that.
Okay. So could you tell me what happened on October 31st of 2022?
Yes, so October 31st, it was another argument. And
Was he back in Georgia? I'm sorry, was he back in Columbus? Is that where you were living?
he was
Okay.
back at this point. And we started arguing or whatever, and he was choking me. I locked the door. He kicked through the bedroom door. He was choking me to the point, like he put me in a headlock, and I was like,
I'm sorry, Judge. I'm not sure if the other attorney is.
Yeah, she just dropped. She told me to let you guys know. My apologies.
Okay.
Oh, the attorney dropped. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't notice that. We can wait.
Okay. Yes. So October 31st, there was another argument. Won't get into the details. So as a result of that argument, I was choked. I was put in a headlock until I started to turn purple and almost passed out. I was thrown down several times by the head. I was punched in the head. I also ran out to go look for my neighbor. He snatched me from the neighbor's door. I had to jump out of my balcony, like my patio. I had to knock the screen out and jump out to get away from him. I ended up getting in touch. I have found my son's iPad because he took my phone. And I found my son's iPad in his room, and that's how I was able to call my parents, and my parents called the police.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back. When you say after he punched you in the head, choked you till you nearly passed out, and took your phone, you were able to escape. Where were the kids at this time?
My son, or the youngest child that we shared together, was right there in the same room when this occurred. He was inside of his playpen. My other son was in his room. My oldest, my 5-year-old, was in his room.
Okay, and so you managed to get out of the house. You went to the neighbor's house. Could you explain what you mean when you said he snatched you from the neighbors?
Right. So he, the day that this happened, he wouldn't let me leave. Like, I was like, just let me leave, just let me leave. I just want to leave. And he's like, you're gonna get the police call. They're gonna come arrest me. Yada yada yada. I didn't do all this stuff to just go to jail. I'm not going to jail because of you. And da 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 da. So that's when finally, like, I went on the patio because there's like a glass door. I opened the glass door and I just went and jumped out of the patio. And then once he left, he took our son, like the youngest, and he said he was leaving. Then that's when I ran back in there, and I went in the room, and that's where I got my son's iPad, and I called my dad, and my dad called the police, and the police
Okay. Okay, so I'm trying to get you to describe to me. You said he snatched you from the neighbor's
door.
house. Yeah. Can you
right.
just?
So I was in front of her door and I was knocking on the door, but she wasn't answering. And so that's when he like snatched me from the door and dragged me back in the house.
Where did he grab you?
He grabbed me by my arm.
Okay, and when you what kind of force did he use?
He like yanked me and then dragged, like I was on the floor, and he dragged me back into the house. And this was the same arm that was injured in a previous incident. And he was like, well, I'll break your arm again, or I'll do whatever to your arm again. That's what he said. He used the word break, but as we discussed, like it was a specific.
Okay, so he drug you by your arm back into the house. And then what happened?
So my parents had already like called the police and he left. And the police had came, and they were like, you know, where is he? He had left. The police called him and he was like, where are you? Like, you know, she has marks. There's stuff, you know, obviously nothing just didn't happen. Like something happened. And he was like, I'm scared. And the man was like, well, the police was like, yeah, well, I mean, if you didn't do anything, why are you scared?
Okay, so was he arrested on that date?
No, he was not.
Okay. Did you take any photos of your injuries?
I did.
Okay. I'd like to pull up. Well, first let's go into, did he damage any property on October 31st?
He damaged the door to the bedroom. When I was in there, I had locked the door. He kicked the door down. He damaged my mirror.
Was this before or after he drug you back in the house from the neighbors?
This was before. This was early
Before.
on in the argument. Yes.
Did you take a
Okay.
photograph of the damage to that door?
The door, yes. And the mirror as well.
Okay. He also damaged a mirror?
Yes.
How did he damage the mirror?
He threw it. Like he just took it and threw it and it broke.
Okay, so I'd like to pull up petitioner's exhibit number 6, which is on page 7. Is this the picture you took of your door on October 31st?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
And this is the door to your bedroom?
Yes, ma'am.
And you had closed the door and you were hiding in the bedroom from him?
Yes.
Is this a photograph that you took?
Yes, ma'am.
And this is the mirror on October 31st, 2022?
Yes, ma'am.
All of these photos, I'd like to, if I could, Your Honor, I'd like to authenticate these photos in bulk unless there's some objection.
That's fine. And if there are any objections to specific ones, then I'm certainly happy to hear those once we get through. So we can.
She just again.
I don't see Ms. Jackson anymore. Any of these photos, have you altered them in any way?
No, ma'am.
And are they a fair and accurate representation of the injuries to your body on those dates?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And here, the first photo, could you explain how'd you got that mark on your wrist?
Yes. So that was during the altercation that occurred. I was trying to leave and he kept grabbing my hand off. Like I was trying to reach for the door handle, and then that's when he kept grabbing my wrist.
Okay, now on the next page, you have a photo of your head.
Yes, so that's when he punched me in the head. Like he punched me in the head like repeatedly during that argument, and that's the bruise from it.
Okay, what about on the next page?
Those are choke marks.
Okay, so it looks like there are red marks at the lower part of your neck.
Yes.
Okay. And the next page.
Busted lip.
Okay. And on the next page.
The rest of those are like bruises, and he had hit me with like a shirt or something, and it was like the edge into like a blouse, like a rope kind of thing that you like tie the blouse with, and it left that mark. And then the rest of them are bruises from him grabbing me and like flipping the bed, and then I had hit something.
Okay, so the rest of the photos are just your bruising that occurred as a result of the incidents. Okay. And did you seek any medical treatment for any of the injuries you sustained on the 31st?
No, I did not. I did talk to someone like briefly, but they told me that it would like escalate, like it will open all kinds of investigations and stuff like that. So
Did you have?
I'm sorry, but I feel like we lost Attorney Jackson. Yeah, she dropped again. Judge, we do have people from the 4 p.m. Is it okay if I put them in the waiting room and then check in at 4 p.m.?
Yeah. So here, for the petitioner, let me address this question to you. Your son's session ends at 4 o'clock anyway, correct?
yes, sir. Oh, yes, Your Honor.
So even in a perfect world, we're not doing this any longer than about 5 more minutes anyway, because you're going to have to collect him at 4 o'clock and get him back home.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. I think at this point we can sacrifice those 5 minutes and write that off. We'll reinvest those in other cases. So, and ma'am, do you think 4:30? You'll be at 4:30 or so. You might be able to be situated and able to log back in.
Yes, Your Honor, 4:30, maybe 4:45. The
Okay.
latest you go home.
Well, we've got 3 jail cases and one of them involves a Burmese interpreter. So I like your chances. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to recess from this case for now to reconvene at 4:40.
What I'd like to do is, I was mistaken. There actually were earlier incidences of domestic violence. And there are 2 other instances that I want to draw the court's attention to. When you were testifying about the incident on October 31st, you said that the respondent dragged you by your arm, and you mentioned he had previously injured that arm. Could you tell me what date he
The
did
day that this
that?
occurred was July 24th of 2022.
Okay, and so you're speaking about the injury to your arm occurred on that date?
Yes, ma'am, it did.
Okay, could you tell me what the respondent did to injure you and your arm on that date?
Yes, ma'am. So on this date, we had an argument. Things got physical. I was thrown against the closet, like in the closet, I was thrown against the wall several times. I was slammed onto the floor several times. I was stuck in the room with him. He wouldn't allow me to leave the room. Several instances of pushing, flipping the bed several times while I was sitting on it. That was what happened that day. After that, later in the day, like a little bit after, everything, he left and stuff like that, I went to the ER. They took an x-ray. They said that I needed an MRI, but they couldn't do one right at that moment. So that's why the date on the report is further into the future, a little couple days, later, because I had to be scheduled for an MRI.
Okay, when you're referring to a report, you're referring to a medical record?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we haven't gotten to that yet.
Okay.
What did he do to your arm specifically that caused damage?
He was yanking me, pulling me. He was slamming me on the floor. After I was slammed on the floor, that's when, that's what I heard, the arm, like something pop inside my arm, and I started screaming.
Okay, and in July of 22, you were living in Georgia?
Yes, Muskogee County, Georgia.
Okay, I'd like to ask that exhibit identified and marked as a 10 be brought up. Okay, were you actually able to get an MRI of your arm and your shoulder on that date?
Not on the same day, no.
Okay, when were you able to get that MRI done?
The 11th of August, 2022.
Exhibit 10, is this the report and the diagnosis from that MRI imaging?
Yes, ma'am, this is the report.
Okay, and what did you understand your injuries to be as a result of what occurred on July 24th?
So they told me that my shoulder had been dislocated. They said it was consistent with the fall. And they said that it was the shoulder dislocation caused a complete tear of my labrum, in my shoulder socket. So that's what they told me. And they said I had a lot of swelling and fluid in there, which was expected with, what happened.
How long did the pain of this injury last? What did it disable you in any way?
Yes, ma'am. So I could not put my seatbelt on. Anytime that I would try to reach, turn my hand a certain way, I was not able to do that. I couldn't sleep on that side. I could not even hold my son in that arm. I was not able to perform my military duties. And that was thrown into my packet for getting out of the military. That was one of the reasons that I had to get out, because I could not perform my duties due to this injury.
Okay. If there's no objection, I'd like to offer Exhibit 10 into evidence and then publish it.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, admitted.
Is the respondent a current active member of the military?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Was he at one time?
Yes, he was.
Has there ever been any other witness to acts of violence between you and the respondent?
Yes, only once.
Okay, and when was that?
That was the June 27, 2021 incident.
Okay, you didn't testify as to that incident. What occurred on that date?
So that was the date that I was moving out of my apartment. And we got into it. My room, me and Mr. Dunbar, it got physical. My room was destroyed. Things were thrown everywhere by him. And we were arguing. And his friend who was taking stuff to the truck, like to the moving truck, when he came back in and he was in the room, he witnessed us going back and forth and arguing. And Mr. Dunbar pushing me, and then his friend was acting kind of like, I guess he got upset, kind of like he was gonna fight him in a way, and he was like, you better not touch her, you better let it go. But yeah, he had pushed me and stuff like that, and his friend was upset.
Did his friend observe Mr. Dunbar pushing you?
Yes, and he was trying to get him off of me.
Okay, and what was his friend's name?
Sir Jala.
Okay. And on that date, did you sustain any injuries?
I did.
What were they?
I had several bruises on my arms. Like I said, my room was destroyed. I just had bruises and scratches.
Okay. And were you pregnant on this date?
No, ma'am, I was not.
Okay. And was your older son present when this occurred?
I don't recall, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So I want to go back a little bit and talk about the criminal charges that were in the state of Massachusetts, because I forgot to ask you a few questions. After Mr. Dunbar was arrested on March 1st, did you remain in the state of Massachusetts?
No, ma'am. Well, I did after that day, but then I ended up moving shortly after.
Shortly after. Okay. And when did you move?
I moved I believe it was officially the 24th, but I had been staying somewhere else because he became friends with the maintenance man and they were watching my apartment. Like I seen him physically looking across over to my apartment, passing by my apartment and things like that.
Who is he when you said he?
The maintenance man that he was friends with, his last name was Cooper.
Okay.
And there were several instances where he was going out of his way and then looking across from the office area over into my apartment, awkwardly passing my apartment, just monitoring what I was doing. At the time, I was pregnant with our second child, our second son, and I just like I did not feel safe staying there at all. So I was staying somewhere else, and then I would just come there like to get whatever I needed, and then I would leave.
Okay. And so when you left the state of Massachusetts, where did you move?
I moved to Florida.
You moved to Florida. And why did you choose Florida?
Because at the time I was pregnant, I was sick, and I needed help with my 2 kids, and that's where family is.
What
Okay.
happened to the criminal charges? Are you aware of how that criminal case was resolved?
Yes, ma'am. So what happened was I wasn't properly notified in order to go back to Massachusetts. So they got in contact. They reached out to me the Friday before the hearing. The hearing was on Tuesday. I reached back out to them. I didn't hear back until Monday. And that's when they said, can you come tomorrow? And I was like, no, because I don't live there. And I let you guys know I don't live there. So they were just like, okay, well, we'll try to see if we can get it extended. But if not, if you're not going to come back, we're just going to more than likely push to go ahead and dismiss it. So they ended up dismissing it.
Hey, when you say they, who are you referring to?
The prosecutor, we talked about it, and she was honestly, she was just like, if you want him, we don't know, like you're saying he's doing more stuff. So he kept doing stuff throughout the process. And I was just like, I just want him to leave me alone. Like, I just want him to leave me alone. And so she was like, if you don't plan on coming back here, then, we'll see what the judge says. And from there, I was just like, I don't plan on coming back, obviously a day before. So as a result, it was
To your knowledge, was it dismissed for lack of prosecution?
I know they said that my testimony was like vital, so I'm assuming.
Okay, that's fine. So in addition to filing this temporary protective order, what other steps have you taken to protect yourself?
I've had to change my number for like 2 times. I had to create a new email address. The VA notified me that somebody called pretending to be me and tried to obtain the address that I had on file. So I had to have everything locked down, like make my account sensitive so that nobody can, I guess, get in there. I had to install cameras all around my house and stuff like that, like outside and stuff like that. I had to change up my vehicles. Like I've had to do quite a bit surrounding this situation. And I also had to contact one of his friends' chain of command in the military because he kept contacting me. Basically,
Who is he when you said
his friend, Brandon Butler. They were contacting me basically saying like I need to agree to this and I need to agree to that when it comes to child support, because I filed a case here in Florida for child support and they were working on establishing paternity and doing the child support. So then Mr. Dunbar, because I didn't agree to whatever, then that's why he went and filed a case in DeKalb County. So there's two open cases.
Okay. Now, when you say, were you attempting to keep your address confidential?
Yes, my address is confidential.
Okay. And given Mr. Dunbar's conduct towards you, are you in fear for your safety?
Yes, ma'am, I am. He's did various things throughout the time that he had bail conditions. He also reached out to my son's father and tried to tell him like that they should go do a certain amount of stuff. My son's father does not want to be a part of anything that we have going on, and he made that clear to me. He also inquired about the domestic violence that I went through in my past relationship, and also called the people that tried to get in contact with the people who sexually assaulted me, and also asked my ex-husband about sexual assault that occurred.
Okay, so are you in fear for your physical safety?
I am.
If this court were not to issue an order of protection.
I am concerned about my safety.
Are you asking that the court extend your order of protection for 12 months?
I'm asking that the judge will extend that order.
Okay, and are you asking that order also extend to protect your children from contact with the respondent?
Given the threats that were made in regards to killing us all, I'm asking that be extended.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, counsel, you can cross whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Ms. Jones. My name is Kenya Jackson and I represent Mr. Dunbar in this matter. I just want to ask a few questions and probably get some clarifications along the way. So you testified that there were previous incidents of violence and things that happened to you, correct?
That is correct, ma'am.
But you haven't mentioned anything about what you did to Mr. Dunbar, did you?
I've defended myself, yes.
And in what instances were you defending yourself? Are you aware of the fact that he was injured?
Nope, he never sought medical attention. He never brought anything to my attention. So
in the July 24th, 2021 incident, did you contact the police? I'm sorry, 2022, July 24th, 2022?
I'm sorry, you said, can you please re-ask? Like you said 2021, then you said 2022. So
July 24th, 2022.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you contact the police?
No, ma'am, I did not.
And this is where you allege that your arm was injured and that you had been slammed to the floor and stuck in a room?
Correct, ma'am.
And when exactly did you say you went to the ER? Because I couldn't see the date on that document.
I went to the ER the same day, the 24th of July.
And when did you have the MRI?
11th of August.
So it was almost 2 weeks later?
Due to the military scheduling, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I want to bring your attention to the June 27, 2021 date.
Mm-hmm.
That's the date you said you were moving out of your apartment, correct?
That is correct.
And you were moving into Mr. Dunbar's apartment?
That is correct.
You indicated that his friend, what was his friend's name?
Soser Jala.
And you said that in your testimony that he observed what happened between the two of you?
Some of it, not all of it.
Okay, so your testimony was that he witnessed you all fighting?
He witnessed a portion of it. He didn't witness what happened in my room, but he witnessed what happened in my son's room because he was taking the stuff down to the moving truck.
So you would agree that he witnessed some part of your fight?
A portion of it, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you testified that he observed allegedly observed my client pushing you?
Pushing me, we were in a struggle. Yes, he was pushing me, and then he attempted to like get him off of me, and then that's where he was like got like in a stance like he was gonna fight. And he was like, "You better not touch her. You better not. You better stop."
Okay. And so were you defending yourself on that day?
I was.
Do you recall punching him in the head?
I do not recall punching him in the head. All I recall doing was pushing him off of me several times, the same thing that his friend was attempting to do.
On the March 1st incident, prior to that incident, do you recall when you all were living in Muskogee that you all were supposed to move into Florida?
That was, I believe, so that was months. That was, yeah, months. Yeah, that was towards I think it was like October, November 2022.
Okay. So you would agree that in October 2022 that your original plan was to move to Florida, correct?
When I got out of the military, yes.
And that you're the one that made the decision to move to Massachusetts, right?
No, not by myself, no.
So you have family in Florida?
Yes, I do.
And when you decided to move to Florida, after you got out of the military, what changed your mind?
So I mean, we had like I think 2 or 3 different places that we talked about moving to. One of them was Miami, the other one was Orlando, and then we talked about Boston. I personally moved to Boston because my son is autistic, and that's the #2 state in the country. I mean, in the country, yes, for children with autism. So that's why my plan was to move there and go to school.
Okay. When you were there, did your son get the help that he needed in Boston?
He started to, yes, but we had to redo all the referrals and do everything. So that was all in the process. He got evaluated and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. So you testified that you actually observed the maintenance man. Did you ever see my client?
Your client came to get his car, but I never observed that.
He never violated any of his pretrial conditions, did he?
Yes, he had people contacting me.
How do you know that he had people contacting you?
Because they told me. One of them told me. And he also contacted my old co-workers and told them that I was missing and that he needed to talk to me and that he needed my phone number, my address, and all of my information.
And what is that person's name?
Her name is Bass, Specialist Bass.
Isn't it true that you've contacted his family as well?
His mother after the incident, yes.
What about his friends on his PlayStation?
Oh yeah, I did. But that's my PlayStation because I purchased it. So.
But you contacted his family and were harassing them, correct?
No, that's not true.
What about the harassing messages you sent to Michael Cooper's business account?
What business? What? I don't even know nothing about a business account. The only thing that
did you send any messages to Michael Cooper?
Michael Cooper. Yes, I did. But not to a business account.
Did you know that Victor, your ex-husband, is not participating because he doesn't want to mess up whatever agreement you all have?
I mean,
objection calls for speculation as to what the reasons why her ex-husband isn't testifying today.
Your Honor, the Ms. Jones testified that he didn't want to be involved. And the reason why I'm asking that question is because he said he didn't want to be involved, or at least it's my understanding that he didn't want to be involved because he doesn't want to affect the visitation that he has in place with the child they share.
Okay, so why don't you ask her if that's been communicated to her? But I agree it's in that fact's not an evidence or speculative kind of category otherwise, but
Okay.
You can ask if he's made any statements regarding his own custody and this matter.
Ms. Jones, has your ex-husband Victor made any statements to you as to why, I'm sorry, something coming across my TV, as to why he's not participating in this custody issue or this TPO hearing?
So he personally reached out to me and said that he doesn't want anything to do with what we have going on. He apologized to me for his past conduct and the things that he did to me. And he pretty much was like, you know, he doesn't want anything to do with this. He changed his number. He said he had a child. He doesn't want anything to do with this. I recorded all of the conversation. So.
You would agree that my client was actually involved with the processes that you went through with your ex-husband, correct?
No,
So you're saying now that he wasn't a part of any of the hearings?
no, he was not at all.
He was
No.
not a part of any of the conversations between you and your ex-husband?
Nope, we talk in our family wizard and he has no access to that.
So it's your testimony that
Hang on a second. Who is we and who is he? We talk in my family wizard.
Oh, so me and my ex-husband have to communicate through our family wizard, Mr.
And the
Dunbar.
respondent has no access to my family.
He's never had any access to that.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I was understanding both pronouns in that sentence correctly. My apologies. for
Sorry
the
about that,
interruption. Go ahead, Council.
I'm asking specifically before the My Family Visit was set up with Victor.
Mhm.
There were hearings that took place that created all of that.
I'm going to object to this line of questioning, Your Honor. I don't know why proceedings involving her ex-husband has any relevance to this TPO proceeding.
Council.
Your Honor, the relevance is that a lot of the hearings that my client attended were very similar to what we're experiencing right now. And I'm just asking the question if my client was involved with those things. And it appears that she's picking up with, no, he's not involved right now. And I'm asking about previously, not right this moment, but with the hearings and the activities that took place prior to everything that's in place between her and Victor now.
I'm not.
Again, I don't.
I'm not.
Sorry, Judge.
I'm not following. Even if that were completely true, what
I'll move on. Judge.
Evidentiary value would that be to this court?
A pattern. A pattern
That she's been abused twice, or that she has made these claims up twice,
that
one
she
or
has
the
made,
other.
yes, that she has made these claims up twice. Yes, Your Honor.
Or depending on the assessment of her credibility, the alternative. But okay, but we're not going to hear. How would that be brought into evidence as part of the respondent's case? He's going to say, testify as to her testimony in other court proceedings.
No, Your Honor, he's just going to testify to what he's observed in other court, in other proceedings and interactions with other people, just as she has.
I'm going to be honest, I don't know about that, but you can carry on with your questioning for the time being.
Okay, Your Honor, I'll keep it moving. Ms. Jones, you were served on the legitimation, correct?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Do you remember being served on that? When you were served on that? I'm sorry.
It was sometime in May.
And you provided an answer to that legitimation, correct?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay, and do you recall when, well, you already testified that the case was dismissed against my client in Massachusetts. And you're aware that that case was dismissed in July, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so when that case was dismissed, you filed this TPO just about a week after that case was dismissed, correct?
I can't remember the exact date, but it was close to that time. I was advised that I needed to get a TPO because the bail conditions were coming off if the case was dismissed. So that's what the victim advocate asked me to do. And I previously tried to obtain a protective order here in Florida when I first got here. They said that they didn't have any jurisdiction. And Massachusetts, they told me that I needed to come back there in order to do one. And I planned on going back there, but it just was not financially the right thing to do. So my victim advocate did some research, and that's when she said, you need to figure out where he lives. And that's how they got the county. And that's what led to me filing a petition.
And these incidents that you're describing all took place well in advance of the Massachusetts issue, correct?
I'm sorry, can you, I guess, re-ask your question? Because you're saying the
Massachusetts case is the main case on this TPO.
Correct.
And the other incidents that you're referring to inside of the TPO, you didn't do anything in those cases regarding calling the police or filing a TPO.
I did call the police. I also reported to my chain of command, my medical doctors. They knew what was going on as well. So I asked them at the moment not to do anything because I was dealing with some other stuff with him. So I didn't want to further aggravate things.
And so with these incidents that took place in July of 2021, the incident that took place in July of 2022, and then the October one, you still moved to Massachusetts with Mr. Dunbar?
Yes. So back in January, what happened was the lease ended in Georgia, and I was getting out the military, so I did not have really anywhere else to go. And there was long wait lists. So I went ahead and moved to Massachusetts, and we resided there, but I told him that I just didn't think that it was a good idea from the beginning. And he was like, oh, things are going to be different. Like, we're both out of the military. Things are going to change. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. And it was still the same stuff. So
Let me direct you to the October 31st incident.
mhm.
After that incident, you said that the police came out, correct?
Yes, they did.
And there was no arrest made, was there?
No, I agreed to go ahead and I said, hey, as long as he leaves, I don't care what he does. I just want him to leave. So
And he left, right?
correct.
He moved to Texas, didn't he?
He did not move. All of his stuff was still in my apartment. He said he was coming back. And he did not move. I even told him that I was going to go. I even sent him an email saying, I'm evicting you. I can't even remember the date that it was on, but I said that you're not allowed to come back into this apartment, so on and so forth. And he said that he had been getting mail there, and the police also said the same exact thing. He's been getting mail here. Like, there's certain laws and things in place. You can't just do that.
Did you proceed with any eviction process?
No, ma'am, I did not. I just did the email, and that was it.
Do you recall when you provided your answer, what you answered to in terms of whether or not my client was the natural father of your son?
Yes, I put that he is. He's on the birth certificate, all of that.
Isn't it true you isolated him from his friends?
No, that is not true.
Isn't it true you isolated him from his family?
That is not true.
Isn't it true that you punched him on FaceTime in front of his mother?
I did not punch him. He was on top of me, and I moved him out the way.
Isn't it true that you've called his family and tried to threaten his job?
What job? He doesn't even have a job. Not that I'm aware of. Why would I threaten his job? He's not in the military.
What about his future career?
I haven't called anybody. What future career? From my understanding, he was in school in Massachusetts, and I haven't talked to him. I don't know anything about his plans. I don't know anything about what he has going on.
Okay, I'm glad you said that. So isn't it true you haven't talked to him?
I have not talked to him. The only thing that I asked him was to cease from having people contact me.
And isn't it true you haven't even seen him?
I have not seen him. Other than today, I have not seen him.
And isn't it true that he hasn't seen his son since March?
Right. That was a part of the bail conditions.
Have you seen those conditions?
They were emailed over to me. Yes, ma'am.
You allege that in your testimony, you allege that he threatened to shoot up the house. Did you mention that to the police?
Yes, I did. That's why they took all the weapons in Massachusetts.
So you're saying you mentioned that in Massachusetts?
Yes, I did mention that in Massachusetts.
And just, I didn't object to this, but I just want to ask the question about the photos. Were those photos that were associated with the October 31st, were they all taken on the 31st, or they were taken at different times?
These were taken on the 31st. And then, yeah, those were on the 31st. And then I think the next day when I seen the bruise appear on the side of my face, that's when I took that other picture.
And for clarification, on the October 15th incident, did you call the police for that one?
October 15th.
In Muskogee County, when the door was kicked in?
No, ma'am. No, I did not.
And you mentioned earlier the charges that he had
Correct.
in Massachusetts.
Yes.
I didn't know if the second charge was what exactly did you say that second charge was?
It's in the letter from the advocate. I can look at it really quick. I just know that they said that it was improper, something about storage of a firearm.
Correct. Okay, that's what I wanted to just know if you were aware what the charge actually was for. At this time, I don't believe I have any additional questions, John.
Redirect.
To clarify, he was also charged in Massachusetts with assault and battery on a family member, wasn't he?
Yes, that was the second. Yeah, the second. That was the first charge, and then the second one was the one that she just asked me about.
Okay. And to your knowledge, were his weapons returned to him after that case was dismissed?
I'm not sure.
Okay, that's
I don't
fine.
want to speculate. I don't know.
All right, thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, the petitioner rests.
Your Honor, we would like to call Mr. Dunbar. Your Honor, I'm sorry. I need to make an adjustment. I forgot that my witness has been online since 10 o'clock this morning. Is it possible for me to do his testimony first?
Oh, yes. We can
It's Funsher Jolly. Could you tell the court how you know Mr. Dunbar?
I met him when we were in Liberia together in 2009.
And what happened after 2009?
We just stayed friends. I left Liberia in 2012 and we got reunited in 2013 and we've been close ever since.
And could you tell the court that your connection, other than being friends, is there any other connection that you have with Mr. Dunbar?
Besides, we pretty much grew up together. We danced together. We, went out together. We did everything together.
So you would consider yourself good friends with Mr. Dunbar?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And on the particular day I want to draw your attention to is June, I believe it was June 21st or June 27th, 2021.
Yes.
Do you recall that day?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you recall about it?
It was, I was still living in Georgia. Him and I were roommates and he had asked me to help his girlfriend move out of their apartment because he wanted her to move in with us.
And you assisted with that move?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you describe what was happening during that move?
When we got there, it was pretty much, I saw that they were both pretty aggravated about moving because, moving can be difficult. But it seemed like they wanted to talk about something. And as we were moving things, his girlfriend, Maya, she got very aggravated. And while we're in her son's room, while we were moving things, she became the aggressor and hit Franklin in the face 2 times. And Franklin was physically upset. And I decided to remove him from the apartment.
Did you see Franklin or Mr. Dunbar, did you see him strike Maya?
No, ma'am.
What did Mr. Dunbar do?
Like I said, he was physically upset and I know how he is. And I decided to move him immediately.
And when you removed him, where did you remove him to?
Outside of the apartment.
And when she left him from the moved him from the apartment, what happened then?
I heard a lot of yelling, mostly coming from Maya. She was saying something along the lines of how she was going to hurt his career in the military because he was still in the military at that time.
Did you observe anything like, did you observe Maya being pushed by Mr. Franklin?
No, ma'am.
Did you observe Mr. Franklin moving any furniture or pushing any furniture?
No, ma'am.
Did you observe any injuries to Maya?
No, ma'am.
Did you observe any injuries to Mr. Dunbar?
Yes, he had a slightly black eye. It was still pretty fresh.
Was the police called that day?
Not to my recollection.
Did you leave the premises with Mr. Dunbar?
Yes, ma'am.
And you said that you all were roommates, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So did you all go home?
So after that incident, I believe they worked something out and we finished the move.
You finished the move that same day?
I believe so.
Okay.
Because we had most of the stuff to my recollection.
Okay. Was the temperament between the two of them, what was it like when you continued the move?
It was still pretty tense, but like I said, I believe I worked it out.
Okay. And how long did Maya live with you all as roommates?
So after the move, which was June 27th, and she moved in finally. I stayed until about August until I moved out. So July, August, about 2.5 months, 2 months.
And during that time, did you notice or recognize any more arguments between the two of them?
Every once in a while, yes.
Okay. Anything physical?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Jola, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Jala, like Allah with a J.
Jala. Okay, thank you. During the time you were helping them, the respondent and the petitioner, move on June 27th of 2021, were there periods of time where either or both of them were not within your direct view?
I mean, all the doors were open because we were moving, so I could pretty much see everything that was going on.
Except for the times that you were taking things out to the truck, correct?
Yes,
So when you were moving things or you're at the truck, rearranging things in the truck to fit it all in, there were times where you didn't observe you couldn't observe any interactions between the two of them.
correct.
Okay. You said that you were in Maya's son's room when you observed her hit Mr. Franklin, and Mr. Franklin was upset.
That is correct. We were both in her son's room when Maya hit him in the face 2 times. Correct.
Okay. And to your knowledge, do you know what preceded that interaction in her son's room?
I can't remember everything that had happened, but like I said, I know that they were trying to discuss something, and they didn't want to talk about it in front of me. Sorry, so I was getting a phone call. Let me go ahead and mute. Sorry. Yes. They wanted to discuss something, but Franklin kept saying, now's not a good time. Let's finish the move, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. So you said you took him outside and you said, man, it's not worth it. Let's leave. So he was obviously, you remove him for both their safety or just for his safety?
I mean, he was the one that was attacked, so mainly for his safety.
Okay. And what's his height and weight? What would you estimate that to be?
5'10", 190 pounds.
And what about Ms. Jones? What's her height and weight, would you estimate?
I'd say about 5'4", 5'3". I'm a pretty tall guy, so I can't really judge her particular height.
Okay. And what about her weight? Do you have an estimate on that?
It'd be 130, 140.
Okay. I don't have any further. I just want to be clear. What were you doing in Liberia together with Mr. Dunbar?
We're both in high school together.
Okay.
Junior high and high school, excuse me.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Counsel, did you have redirect?
I did briefly, Your Honor. So when you were taking things to the truck, were you out there for an extended period of time?
As soon as I dropped, whether it was clothes or toys or whatever that I was moving, once I dropped it out, I came immediately back in.
So if you had to estimate how long you were outside, what would you estimate it to be?
4 minutes, if that. Where we parked the U-Haul was right next to the stairs, so I could easily, go up and down.
So just long enough to get up and down the steps.
Yes, ma'am.
And just for clarification, you were born in the United States, correct?
Correct.
And how did you end up in Liberia?
So my parents are from Liberia, born and raised there, and they ran away from the war back in the 1990s. So I was born in '95 in New Jersey, and I have siblings and stuff, and they decided that they wanted to move back in 2006 when they thought that they had everything together. So I ended up moving to Liberia with them in 2006.
Okay. All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
You can proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Dunbar, if you could tell the court, are you currently working?
No.
And how do you earn a living?
Right now I'm a disabled vet. I get my income from VA.
Okay. And that income, your disability is based on what?
It's based on my medical retirement that I got from the Army, ma'am.
Okay. And how long were you in the Army?
I was in the Army for 9 years, ma'am.
And since leaving the Army, what have you aspired to do?
I entered, well, first I applied to a master's program in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which I got accepted into, Nova Southern University for mental health. But with Maya's plans and her wanting to go to Boston, Massachusetts, I applied to Cambridge College and I got accepted into Cambridge College then. So that's where I am presently.
Okay. And so let's back up a little bit. So when did you decide to leave? Where were you living before you applied to to graduate school?
I was living in Columbus, Georgia, man.
And do you remember the time frame that you were living in Columbus?
So I was stationed there back in 2019. I went to Fort Bragg after, and then got reassigned to Fort Benning, Columbus, Georgia, where I met Maya Jones.
Okay. And when did you meet Maya Jones?
I met Maya Jones March 2021.
And after you met her in 2021, tell me about your relationship.
In the beginning, it was amazing. Maya was everything and more. Like it was good. It felt like I had met my soulmate. Everything was going good until like I noticed like certain red flags, and my friends advised me to stay. No, not to stay rather, but I kind of ignored it and I just continued.
And when did Maya get pregnant, or when did you all have your son?
We had our son March 29th, 2022.
Describe how you handled things during the pregnancy.
When Maya was pregnant, I gave her the earth, the moon, and the stars. Anything she wanted. As a matter of fact, after she gave birth, nurses could attest for that and everything. She said she wanted another one. She said a tear. It was a beautiful thing.
Let me direct your attention to the incident that occurred prior to your son being born, through the July 27, 2021. Could you talk to me about that?
July 27th.
2021.
Oh, 2021. So at this point, Maya had been over the house almost all the time. Victor was there. It got to the point where she was sleeping there. Victor was sleeping on the couch, and Ashley looked at me and was like, "Man, it seems like you really like this girl." I'm like, "Yeah, I do." He's like, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I honestly want to move her in because this makes no sense because she's paying rent over there and she's here all the time." So he's like, "Hey, bro, if that's what you want to do, go ahead. I don't advise it, but okay." And I did that.
Now, who is Victor?
Victor is her firstborn son.
So Victor, who's 5 now?
Yes, he's fine.
Okay. So you were having a conversation with Victor, the child.
I was having this conversation with Eshe, Soso Jala.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think you said Victor.
I spoke with Victor on the line of she was sleeping over the house in my room, and it got to a point where Victor was laying down on the couch.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you were having this conversation with your friend.
Yes.
So let's focus on what happened on the day that you all moved her into your apartment.
So before that day of move-in, she got into an argument with me. She said I liked somebody's picture on Instagram, and she said I was embarrassing her, and this is something that she cannot, like, she's not gonna have it, and whatnot. And third, I looked at her and I was like, "Look, Maya, we'll talk about that later, and whatnot. Let's focus on the moving." As we were going throughout the moving, I didn't want Ashley to know about it because I didn't want Ashley in my relationship problems. So when we stepped aside and we went in the room, I looked at her, I'm like, "Maya, we'll talk about this after. This is not the time." She continued to be aggravated about it. I was like, "It is what it is. We're not discussing this right now." And as we went in the room, she went further on to like show that aggression. She started standing in front of me. She started yelling in my face and whatnot. SJ's standing right there. And next thing I know, I'm punching the face and I'm in shock rather. She hits me in the face again. And like, I don't know what to do. Because at this particular point, like, no, I've never been in a situation where a woman other than her had put hands on me.
Okay.
SJ saw my face. He picked me up literally. Took me out the door. He's like, let it go. Not worth it. As we stood there, she began to yell, "I'm going to use you as a passionate reassignment to go to Korea." So in the Army, I was an officer and she was enlisted. We were fraternizing and we were not supposed to be with each other to begin with. So our relationship was in secret. So she used that as a leverage to threaten me and say that she was going to get a passionate reassignment to go to Korea and that I was going to lose my career. While like we stood outside for a moment, Eshe was just like, "Let's calm everything down and whatnot." I knocked on the door. I'm like, "Maya, chill out," and whatnot. She opened the door. She let me in. And she was like, "I don't want him in our discussion. I don't like him."
Okay. So after that, did you end up leaving?
Yes. After that, I went back outside. By the time Ashley was like, he had been moving some other stuff around the truck. And I was just like, "Bro, let's just carry this? He was like, you good? I was like, I'm good, bro. And we moved the rest of the stuff that same night. As shit went in his room, he felt awkward about the situation, but her and Victor were there.
Okay.
And we moved her stuff into a storage that was right up the street from where I resided.
Okay. Let me draw your attention to the July 24th, 2022 incident.
Okay.
What happened on that day?
On that day, again, everything was going fine. And Maya, it got to a point where she was like, oh, I can't get past this. There was some girl like in November that tried to talk to me and I shut it down and didn't tell her completely. And she got upset that I didn't tell her completely. So I'm at Walmart at this point, we're arguing and whatnot. And she reveals to me that she had HPV. She had HPV from the beginning. She waited a year plus to tell me because she did not want to reveal that to me and whatnot. And I'm not gonna lie, that made me very upset. My son was born underweight. I was wondering why my son was born underweight. And she waited an entire year to tell me. When I got back to the house, I did not want to talk to her. I told her, give me clothes. I need to go to Atlanta. I need to go to my Uncle Banja. And she refused, and she tried to manipulate the situation. And I'm like, at this point, I do not want to talk to you. You're not gonna like force me to talk to you after you just told me that you've had HPV, you've known it for a whole year, you knew it through childbirth, and you said nothing.
And then what happened? Did you leave to go to your uncle's?
This is the situation with the door and whatnot. Like, she kept I couldn't hear exactly what she was saying because I was on the outside and it was like a small opening in between it. And at this point, I'm like, Maya, this is embarrassing. Like, this is humiliating. At this point, you're bullying me. You can't give me that type of information and then want to control the manner in which I can react. I just don't want to be around you.
Okay.
So I went on. I was like, please open the door. Like this is embarrassing. Open the door. I was upset. I won't lie. One night she brought me clothes and I'm like, I'm going to Atlanta. I have to look presentable. Like, what if my uncle wants us to go sit down somewhere and talk? I was like, I need to talk to someone. So as I continue nudging on the door, like piece of it, what you going over? I had enough room to go through. I went in the house. I grabbed what I needed and I left. And I went to Atlanta that night. And while I was in Atlanta, she called me apologizing, begging. My uncle looked at me and told me that you're here now. This is your family. Go back home. And the next day I went back home and I forgave her.
And just for clarification, she was living in the apartment that you moved her into, correct?
No. So this is where things get tricky. While she was pregnant, we had a mold issue in one of the apartments at my old apartment. So they moved us to another apartment and there was still mold in it. My friend Worthy helped us. His last name is Worthy. His name is Taj Worthy. Helped us move from one apartment to another. And we saw mold in that one. My friend Cameron.
So, Mr. Dunbar, I'm just trying to get to the point that
Okay.
you're living in the complex.
No, we moved to a different complex.
Okay, so whose name is on this lease?
Her name was on that lease, but my card wasn't one paying the rent, man. Up until the month I got out the army, which was November.
All right.
I think somebody.
And so on that day.
I think the judge is gone.
Oh.
Yeah, he must have lost connection. Just give us a moment for him to come back on.
And so do you recall anything happening that day that would lead to the police being called?
On the 24th now?
Or not, I'm sorry, not the police being called, but would lead to anything regarding an injury?
Oh, she was doing earlier that day, she was doing a pull-up, or no, at that point it was a leg tuck for the ACFT and whatnot. And she we had one of these, you know, those that you buy at Walmart, which is like a portable pull-up bar. You put it like behind the door and whatnot. She was practicing a leg tuck on that, fell and landed on her shoulder. That is also what she's service-connected 40% disability from the Army from, which makes it service-connected.
When she fell, did she seek any medical attention?
She went to the ER that night. She let me know that she did, yeah.
And did anything happen after that, as far as the injury?
Over time, it took her a while to get an MRI. And then when she was going through her disability process, they took that and they added it in it. And that's what also disqualified her and led to her added to her medical retirement. No, as well.
Objection, hearsay. He doesn't have any direct knowledge based upon these questionings as to the reasons for her discharge or any other facts related to her service.
Mr. Dunbar, what are you basing that conclusion on?
I'm basing this off her and I went through the medical retirement process at the same time. Literally. I was there for everything. Literally.
So,
And so
who-
I'm sorry.
sorry, this is more for my information. Who makes this determination?
So
Can we just say the government?
yes, the government. We'll just say the
Okay. So the government sends a finding that you are whatever percent disabled or whatever it may be, and there are different disabilities, different levels of disability that can pertain to various conditions. So have you been told by the petitioner what a finding was or what these numbers were?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Carry on, Ms. Jackson.
Okay, so on June 24th, is it your testimony that she fell off a pull-up bar?
Yes.
And did you do anything to her to cause that injury?
No.
Okay, let me draw your attention to the October 31st incident.
Hmm.
Could you talk to me about that?
So at this point, I had went to Liberia for a month, and while I was in West Africa, Liberia, I got her a pre-engagement ring, which is a V ring by our culture, and I got my son a both of these were gold. They were gold. It was a gold bracelet with his name on it. For her culture, like the children have bracelets on the anklet. So I had my son Gianni in my hand, and she had accused me of paying prostitutes in Liberia. And she was arguing with me saying I spent too much money in Liberia. And I continued to tell her no, majority of the money went to the gold in which I spent for her. And she punched me in the head with my son in my hand. And I looked at her, I was like, Maya, did you really just punch me with Gianni in my hand? And she did it again and again and again. And it got to the point as I was taking my son to literally go and put him in the crib, she was still hitting me. At that point, I pushed her away from me. And when I'm like, Maya, what are you doing? Our son is right here. She took off the V ring and she flushed it down the toilet. For
Okay.
a moment.
So let me show you some exhibits, and I'm sorry, Your Honor, I'm on my phone, so I may or may not be able to see them myself, but I believe it's responded exhibit A.
A is an apple.
Yes, A
All
is
right,
an
so
apple.
Ms. Broom, can you get that one?
And just for the record, although I have provided Ms. Jackson copies of the petitioner's exhibits, I've received nothing from her with respect to the intended exhibits for admission.
Okay,
All right.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I didn't receive anything from you, and maybe because I'm on a different computer, so I don't have access to my work email. So everything that was sent, I sent on Sunday. My staff resent all these things while I was.
It's 6:30. Let's just see the exhibit. If there's an issue, I mean, part of this is challenging. You know, I spent 12 years as a prosecutor, and part of the challenge, you know, we did not have reciprocal discovery in misdemeanor cases. And one of the things that was challenging but understandable as I grew and matured with that was the idea that it wasn't clear exactly what evidence would be presented until you had a chance to hear the evidence in the case in chief in the first place. And so Ms. Broom will get the exhibit pulled up and screen shared momentarily, and we can work through it. If it's anything complicated or that requires further follow-up questions, there will be ample time to do so.
Can you see my screen?
Yes. Mr. Dunbar, do you recognize this picture?
Yes, I do, ma'am.
And is it an accurate depiction of what is this picture?
This is after things had calmed down, and
No, what date was this picture taken?
oh, this is October 31st. No,
Okay, is this picture altered in any way?
no, ma'am.
And it's a fair and accurate depiction of what happened, or a picture of you from October 31st, 2022?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, we'd like to admit what we have marked as responded exhibit A.
All right, so admitted.
Mr. Dunbar, could you describe what's going on in this picture?
So at this point, I had been punched in the head, and I was upset, and I took a picture of this as a recollective memory.
Okay, and is that little mark to my left on your forehead, is that the mark that you're talking about?
Yes, that's the mark from the V ring in which she had on.
Mr. Dunbar, could you explain what this is showing?
This is showing a stretch that Maya had put on me.
Okay. And when was this picture taken?
It was taken October 31st at the aftermath of Maya biting me.
And is this a fair and accurate depiction of what your forearm looked like on October the 31st?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dunbar, could you tell us exactly what this is a picture of?
This is a picture of the aftermath of a very deep bite mark from Maya Jones.
Okay.
You can literally see the curve and the teeth marks.
Okay. And can we move on to the next? Dunbar, can you explain what this picture is showing?
This is the aftermath of me being called by Maya Jones, rather.
You indicated that you had just gotten back from Liberia and gave Maya a ring, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so, was there an argument that ensued on that day?
Yeah, she had said I paid for a prostitute in West Africa, Liberia. That's why I spent about $2,000 the 1 month I was there.
Okay. And so, tell us a little bit more about what happened on that day after the argument. Was the police called?
The police were called, and she had gotten so like violent to the point in which I took my son. Like I was like, at this point, you need to calm down. You don't want to go anywhere. I took my son. I put him in the car. In the process of me taking my son, she would kick in my car, cursing at me in the parking lot. I managed to drive off. Yeah, go ahead, man.
So when you're saying you took your son, did you take your son before or after the police got there?
Oh, this is before the police got there. When the
Okay.
police, yeah, go
Who
ahead.
called the police?
Maya called the police. Maya Jones called the police, rather.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand the order.
Mhm.
You all were arguing. Maya called the police, and
Mhm.
then you got in the car to
No.
leave it.
I got my son,
Mhm.
put my son in the car. Maya called the police.
Okay.
The police told me to come back.
Okay.
They told me to bring Gianni back, which I did.
So just for clarification, Mr. Dunbar, you left before she called the police.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So she called the police, and the police told you to bring your son back,
Yes, ma'am.
and you did that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you were back on the premises, did you have an opportunity to talk to the police?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you talked to them, what did you tell them?
I explained to them the scenario in which happened. The first thing I alerted them was that all the firearms that were in the premises had been taken out. They're in my trunk. I popped up in my trunk. I said, here are these firearms. Like Maya got into a point where she was in the house. She went in the room, and I heard I had positioned Victor in the living room. I put on Gracie's corner for him. And when I put in Gracie's corner, and I heard an assault rifle rack back, and I immediately went to the door and whatnot. And I put I punched a hole in the door, opened it, and there she was with an assault rifle pointing at me. I went up, I grabbed the barrel, I pulled it up, and I was like, don't ever do that again. And I immediately took the rest of the firearms out of the household. And then from there, that's when I proceeded. I put my son in the car and I drove away. And afterwards, that's when she called the police. But again, now back to me showing the police and whatnot, I explained them what happened. At that time, I still had blood drip from my forehead. I still had all these marks on me and whatnot. They sat her and I down. They asked what happened. I gave my collection of what happened. They looked at her, they asked her, did you lay hands on this man? She said, no. The police officer said, I'm gonna ask you again. Did you lay hands on this man? She said, out of defense. He's like, all right, you know what? We don't have time for this. You're both Army. Somebody has to leave. I raised my hand. I said, I'm willing to leave. The police helped me take my weapons and rounds out of the apartment. I took all my clothes. I went to my buddy in Alabama and whatnot. He was with my unit. I stayed with him for a little, and I looked at him. I was like, I don't feel safe here. I'm just gonna leave as a whole. And I drove to Texas now.
So that night you left the house.
Yes.
You went to Alabama.
Yes.
And how long were you in Alabama?
I was in Alabama for all of 2 hours.
Okay. And then you left Alabama and went to Texas.
Yes.
And when you got to Texas, how long were you there?
I was in Texas for 2 weeks. And within that time frame, Maya apologized and she asked me to come home. She paid for therapy appointments. And because of that, I agreed and I went back. But we did therapy while I was in Texas, before I went back.
Okay. So she apologized to you and asked you to come back.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
And you returned back to where you were living in Muskogee County at the time?
Yes, ma'am.
So let me just make sure I clarify this. When the police were called, was anybody arrested?
No.
And so when you came back to Muskogee County, when was that? Was it November?
Yes, it was still November. It was right before her birthday. Yeah. It was either the 16th or the 7th. Around her birthday. Her birthday is November 18th.
Okay. And so you testified that, so what happened after that? After this October 31st incident, you came back November 17th. What happened after that?
After that, it was things smoothed out. That's when we had went to Florida to visit family. After coming back and visiting family, she decided that she no longer wanted to go to Florida. I told her that was a short window. She said she wanted to go to Massachusetts. During that time, or when you're in school with the Army, they pay for your BAH, for your housing. So I applied to Cambridge College. She wanted to go to Massachusetts. I said, okay, I'm gonna make it happen. And my BAH was supposed to pay for that rent. The cost of living in Boston is very high. Or Massachusetts.
I'm sorry, do you have family?
Just for 1 minute, I apologize. Counsel, you can resume with Mr. Dunbar whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Judge. I want to go back to the October 31st incident, and I believe we left off with you saying that no one was arrested that day. You all decided to move from the Muskogee area to Florida, right? Can you pick it up right there?
So at that point now we had decided that we weren't moving to Florida anymore. We're not moving to Massachusetts. We went to visit Florida. We went to go see family.
Okay. And what happened on that visit?
On that visit, Maya had to undergo a surgery. So we visited family a little bit and then we focused more towards her surgery.
Okay. And then you went back to Muskogee, or did you move straight to Massachusetts?
No, we went back to Muskogee, man.
Okay. And then what?
We stayed in Muskogee until Christmas and it passed. And then for Massachusetts, I was the first to go to Massachusetts because I had orientation for class. So I drove up from Columbus, Georgia to Woburn, Massachusetts, and I signed a lease.
And that was in December?
No, that's in January.
Okay.
Yeah.
January of 2023?
Yes, ma'am.
And then what happened?
I was up there. It was a little bit of a back and forth because Maya at that time hadn't gotten her leave in, eventually her paid leave for her as in the Army. Eventually she did. She came to Massachusetts, and upon her coming to Massachusetts, the Army decided to release her not too long after, and we went back. And forgot. So when she came up, I went up. I had to fly back down to pack up all the stuff in the house in an apartment in Massachusetts. I put in storage. Then we all went back up together. Then the Army told her, boom, you have to leave. Like, you can now leave. Then I went back there, put everything in a U-Haul, and drove it back up to Woburn again.
Mr. Dunbar, keep the testimony specifically to the basics. We don't need that much detail. So when you got to Massachusetts, you went first because you had to start class.
Yes, ma'am.
You left your family in Columbus.
Yes, ma'am.
And you signed the lease in January 2023.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you went back and got your family when?
I went back and got the lease ended January 29th. So it was 2 or 3 days before that.
So the end of January.
Yes.
Okay. You started school, and then let's jump straight to March 1st. What happened?
So before March 1st.
I'm sorry. Before we jump to that, before we leave the 1031 incident, go ahead and just tell us what happened on March the 1st, 2023.
What happened the day before leading up to that is Maya and I had gotten into a disagreement or whatnot. Like I kind of like at that point gave her a space. Like I was at a point in which it was like it was just like at this point I felt like we were in a good place or whatnot. Like we had finally left Massachusetts, we had finally left Fort Benning, everything was good. And we got into a disagreement, stayed away from her. I was supposed to go to class, didn't go to class, went to sleep. She went somewhere else. She woke me up saying that one of my friends called me a narcissist. And I looked at her, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, okay, I know who you're talking about at this point because only one person you're talking about. And I called her, and it was Chanel Dennis. She told me to don't say anything for 2 days. She wants to figure something out. And I said, okay. And for the rest of that day and the following day, I literally said yes, no, or bye to Maya. As her and Maya were texting, she revealed that Maya had a plan to leave me financially unstable, take my child and flee the state, and leave me in a $3,500 lease.
I'm going to object. I'm going to object and ask that this answer be stricken, Your Honor. This is all hearsay.
Counsel.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I didn't hear you.
The objection was hearsay. What's your response?
Your Honor, he is describing what he is aware of, what his knowledge of a conversation was. He's not saying, unless I missed something when someone called just now, but he is talking about what he's aware of.
He's-
Okay,
what he
but
has knowledge
it's-
of. But we can strike it, Your Honor. It's not.
Yeah,
relevant.
it's hearsay. Move on.
So
So, Mr. Dunbar, if you could just stick to what happened. So on March the 1st, we already know that there was a disagreement. Was the police called out?
the police were called.
Okay, and what happened?
I left the gym, went upstairs. Maya spoke of somebody earlier, the maintenance man, Kenny. I was in the gym. He called me, said, "You want to talk?" I was like, "Yeah." Went upstairs, took a shower. I was in the process of taking a shower, put my clothes in the bathroom because I didn't want to talk to her. She put her foot in the door and said, "You need to leave. You need to start getting your stuff. You need to leave now. If you don't leave, I'm gonna get a restraining order on you to break the lease." At the time, I didn't understand what she was saying. I was like, "Maya, I don't want to talk to you. Like, it's crazy what you've done. I know everything." And when I revealed that to her, she blew up. She looked at me, she's like, "You need to leave now." She took my stuff, started putting it in the hallway and whatnot. She grabbed my CPAP machine. I'm diagnosed with sleep apnea. She grabbed my CPAP machine.
I'm trying this girl.
My CPAP machine had water in it. I look at her, I grab it from her. I'm like, "Give me my CPAP machine." She played a damsel in distress, called 911. I'm being choked. I FaceTimed the guy that was in, the maintenance guy. I was like, "Please come here. I don't feel safe." Like, you can see the distance between her and I. When she saw that she was on FaceTime, she left the apartment. Kenny came in. He was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm not okay," and whatnot. He walked back outside. I picked up my son, Gianni. We stepped outside, went around the corner. Boom, the police were there. The police asked me what had happened. They took the baby from me, and I went on further to explain myself. And she kept saying in the background, "I fear for my life, I fear for my life, I fear for my life." They tried to take pictures of her. She said she didn't want any. They said, "Hey, man, we're sorry. You've never been to jail, but you're going to jail." And I was like, "Okay." And I went to jail.
Okay, so let me back you up a little bit. So when the police got there, had you known that they were called?
Yes.
Okay. Had you done anything directly to Miss Jones that day?
No.
Okay. And you've had the opportunity to review the police report, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And based on what you reviewed in that police report, did they see any injuries to Miss Jones?
Nope.
Objection. Hearsay.
Yeah, he can say if he saw injuries, but I don't think we're going to get this report admitted.
Did you see any injuries?
No, ma'am.
And in your conversation with the police officers, did they say to you that, I'm sorry, in your conversation with the police, did they indicate that, to your knowledge, did the police see any injuries?
No.
No, still not appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll move on. So you didn't see any injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And on that night, you went to jail
Yes.
and they arrested you for, and you know the charges, correct?
Yes.
And the first charge was allegedly an assault on Ms. Jones
Mm-hmm.
and for improper storage of firearms, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And on that night, did you actually remove your guns?
No.
Who removed the guns from the house?
The police, ma'am.
And where are those guns now?
They're still in Wilburn PD's custody.
Do you have possession of any guns?
No, ma'am.
And to your knowledge, what was that charge, the improper storage of firearms, about?
So upon moving to Massachusetts, we were within our 60-day window. There were 2 assault rifles and 2 pistols. Both 2 assault rifles belonged to me. The 1 pistol belonged to me and 1 pistol belonged to Maya Jones. And whatnot, we were within our 60-day window, and we still had time to get them registered. Yeah, so they were all packed up. They just happened to be there.
Okay, so the charges, as far as you know, were just charges of the way that they were located in the house, not because you had done anything aggressive with them.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now let's talk about that case. When that case, you went to jail, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were able to bond out?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you bonded out, what did you do?
When I bonded out, I didn't have much time because I had a court case following or whatnot. Like, I got an Uber, went to my parking area, got my car, drove right back to the district court and fell asleep and waited for my my case to start.
Okay, so what did you do in the following weeks after the hearing?
The following weeks after the hearing, I was living from hotel to hotel because I was technically homeless at that particular point. And I was trying to figure out if, with all I had established in in Massachusetts if I want to stay there or not.
And you were homeless because what?
I was homeless because there was a no contact order on me in the $3,500 apartment we were in, and I could not go there.
So one of your pretrial conditions was to not return back to the apartment.
I was allowed only under police escort, which they did. I called the police, they escorted me, and I got some things.
So you were only allowed that one time.
Yes, because by the second time, I tried to go back, and I said that I left my medical documentation in a plastic container. By that time, it was already, I had the police call Maya, and Maya stated that she was no longer in the area. So I could not pick up those things.
So you were unable to go back to the apartment that you resided in.
Yes, ma'am.
That was one of the conditions.
Yes.
Do you remember any of the other conditions?
The other conditions was I could not be within 150 feet of her. I couldn't have any contact with her.
Was there any condition that you couldn't have any contact with your son?
No.
Okay. And after being bonded out and being homeless, where did you eventually end up?
I eventually ended up in Alpharetta, Georgia. After I had to break the lease because Maya did not want to be a part of it anymore, I had to pay $3,500 to break it, which also put a dent on me. My family decided, I spoke to my family and friends, they were like, you need to come to Georgia. We have support.
So you left Massachusetts and went to Georgia?
Yes, ma'am.
And was the case resolved at that point?
No, ma'am. But because of the first case, they had called her and told her to put a restraining order on me. Like the judge, they literally called her in court and she said she had things to do. They said, okay, but wait till the following week. The second week, they called her again. She said, I have things to do. The judge looked at me, they gave me back my $500 bail, and they said, you have no geographical restriction. Go where you need support.
I'm going to object on the basis of hearsay. We don't know what the court said to her. He hasn't said that he's been a party to that conversation.
Mr. Dunbar, what was your role in this?
At this point, I was defending myself in court, sir.
Okay, so you can say your bail was your case was closed, your bail was returned to you, and you were told that you could go where you wanted to go, and I think that's all fair because those would be statements explaining conduct,
Yes.
not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. So we'll move on past it with those adjustments.
Sir,
So I think what he was trying to say is what he heard in court because he was representing himself, Your Honor. I don't think
but he doesn't get to say that. I mean,
right, and I think he was trying to.
Sorry, sir.
Go ahead, Mr. Dunbar.
Where should I pick up?
You said you were representing yourself at the time.
Oh no, like I had a public defender. I had a public defender. Yeah.
Okay. And so was this on the July 25th date? What date was that? Or do you remember?
No, so this was March 4th. There was the first, March 2nd was the first time I went to court because I had slept in jail. 7 days later, March 9th, we went back. So this was on March 9th when the judge returned my bail to me. I went on.
Okay, so let's move to, did you go to any other hearings after that?
I'm just going to jump in here. The undisputed testimony is that the charges were dismissed in July, and the procedural history of the case at any point along the way is irrelevant to this hearing. So I think we just need to jump past any of the legal stuff unless there's something I'm missing about the significance of it.
The question I wanted to ask is, did you miss any court dates?
No, ma'am.
Were you at every court date?
Yes, ma'am.
And while the case was still pending, what other proceedings did you put in place?
I went through going through the process of the legitimation process for my son now.
And do you remember when you started that process?
Yes, I do, ma'am. I started in April.
April of this year?
Yes, ma'am.
And on the night of March the 1st, the night of the incident that we're talking about, was there anything that you discovered or saw when you retrieved your belongings?
Yes, I did, ma'am. I saw something very disturbing, and it really brought a lot of depression to me. I saw a picture of Maya about 2 hours after I was in jail, taking a selfie with her butt out, ma'am.
Okay. Could we, Madam Clerk, could you?
I'm gonna object if she's gonna bring a picture of my client's buttocks into, this is irrelevant.
Your Honor, I think it's very relevant because the picture was taken after the incident that she claimed that my client assaulted her and had manhandled her and mistreated her. And the picture has been altered to conceal her buttocks. But it is a picture that was taken on that night, and you can see the timestamp.
So what?
The relevance is that if the court would allow me to summarize it, I just for the objection, the relevance is that the petitioner is alleging that my client performed violent acts on her, and there was no indication of that, or that she was so distraught. And then 2 hours later, she's taking pictures and posting them. We don't know where she posted them, but my client was able to see it on his Apple account where she was taking pictures just 2 hours after he was arrested. That does not show anyone that's distraught or upset.
Your Honor, there's been testimony, there was an arrest, there were criminal charges. I haven't seen this picture. I don't know why this is.
Pause the stream. So we went
Yeah.
off.
Oh, I'm sorry. So did you want me to admit the photo? I'll just
I'm
go through
sorry.
the
I was
question.
saying that I was admitting the photo based
Oh, I
on
missed that part.
questions Mr. Dunbar, or the answers Mr. Dunbar had given to the questions. And so it's admitted for whatever weight I choose to give it. And you can proceed from there.
Okay. We'll move on, Your Honor. So let's talk about Victor, your Ms. Jones's 5-year-old son. How old was he when you all started dating?
There have been no allegations of anything done to or with Victor regarding either your client or Ms. Jones. I don't know that we need to go through anything associated with Victor. What would we be discussing in regards to Victor?
Your Honor, we would just be discussing my client's knowledge of the different things he personally observed with Victor's father, because my client was the one who was assisting Ms. Jones. And I know it was objected to.
Observed in what context?
In the context of custody, in the context of different proceedings that she filed against the father that my client was aware of because of his interactions and conversations with her. And just
I'm not going to accept the testimony of laypersons about the outcome of court proceedings that are part of public record. Not like that. Not for him to say, oh, this is how divorce or custody or whatever it may be. This is what I was there for. It's
I think it's more so for him to discuss or to talk about what she said to him about what she was doing. But if the court is not going to allow it, then we'll just move on.
we're here to decide what happened between these two.
And I was just presenting it, Your Honor, to be able to establish the pattern that Ms. Jones has when it comes to the proceedings that she files against people, the fathers of her children.
I think there could have been questions on cross about her history of filing protective orders, if any, but even so, I don't, we're here to decide this case based on the evidence and the incidents that are outlined in the petition.
Understood, Your Honor. When this case was dismissed in July of this year, at that time, all of the pretrial conditions were lifted against you, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And at that time, what did you do?
I literally waited 5 days. I thought about contacting Miss Jones immediately on a line of my son. When I thought about it, I was like, let me wait. I waited 5 days. I politely asked her if I could receive pictures of my son. This is my son. I want to hear my son talk. I offered to pay for 6 co-parenting classes between her and myself, a therapist of her choice, and I would pay for it. And she shut it down. And after she shut it down, I've not responded to her since.
But you only reached out to her once since this case was dismissed.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was in July of this year.
Yes, ma'am.
And after you reached out to her, what happened?
After I reached out to her a week later, I was served with this TPO.
Okay. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Cross.
Yes, I just want to ask you a few questions, Mr. Dunbar. You testified that it's your belief that you were charged with improper storage of firearms because the firearms were not properly registered, correct?
The weapons are registered to me. Everything is legal. That's not what I said. No.
Okay, so isn't it true that you were charged with this because the guns were not properly stored, so the children would not have access to them?
All of my weapons were way out of children's reach. The only weapon that was within reach of children was Maya Jones' Glock.
Okay, so it's your testimony then that you didn't improperly store those firearms?
By
Charges against him were dismissed, and storage of weapons is not a predicate offense that can be grounds for a protective order under any circumstance. So I'm going to say that this is irrelevant to this proceeding.
Isn't it true that actually Ms. Jones disconnected her Apple account prior? You testified you had joint Apple accounts, right?
We didn't. She was on my family plan.
She was on your family plan, and that's how you had access to anything that she uploaded to the cloud?
No, as a matter of fact, when I disconnected her, if you take a step back, she talked about being in a PlayStation account and messaging people. When I disconnected her from my account is when she went on a rampage and started texting people in the PlayStation account, impersonating me.
Okay, so your testimony is that you disconnected her from your Apple account.
Yes.
Okay, and you did
Family
that
plan,
before or after you
not
were
Apple account,
incarcerated? Huh?
I said family plan, not Apple account now.
Okay, your Apple family plan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and your testimony is that you did that after you were released from jail?
I did that, yeah, that weekend.
You
To
did that
remove the
weekend.
account was much more difficult. To remove the account that she had attached to the computer. So an Apple family plan is everything. The Find Me, all of that. So when I disconnected her from that, that means all the storage options, everything, she no longer had access to it. She still had an account on my computer.
You actually didn't have that computer stored on your account. You actually had to have Apple retrieve that for you, correct?
It was, ma'am, it's on my iMac. It's the computer that we're using right now is literally the computer. It was like another user.
Okay, I want to go back and talk a little bit about the 31st of October in 2022. You testified that you never laid hands on Ms. Jones, correct?
I did not say that, ma'am.
You did not say that.
I did not say that.
Okay, so you actually did lay hands on her.
If you go back and you hear it, I told you I pushed her.
Okay,
Because at this point, she had hit me in the head. She had consistently kept hitting me in the head. As I was putting my son in his crib, my back was turned. I'm literally putting him down, and she was continuing to hit me.
okay. So maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe you testified that on October 15th, you never laid hands on her.
Ma'am, you just said 31st, and now you switched to 15th.
I know. That's because I was perhaps
I'm
confused.
sure that everybody here is ornery because it is 7:45 and we're all used to dinner at 6 o'clock. So I'm going to give everybody some grace. Questions get asked and questions get answered. That's the only way that we do this without putting caught in here and deciding to turn in for the night. And so, yeah, she asked a question. You gave an answer and you clarified it. And now she's changed the question and is asking you about a different date. And when she changes the question and asks a different question, you answer that question too, because she has a right to ask these questions, whether absent a legal objection to them. And that's how we get through the rest of the proceeding. So now she's asking about October 15th. And what is your response about what happened on October 15th?
I'm sorry, sir. I was just
And I'm sorry, before my client answers, I want to clarify, I don't recall me asking him any questions about the October 15th incident because I didn't ask him about that.
She has a right to a thorough and sifting cross-examination of your client.
Okay.
Okay, so I just want to clarify whether or not your testimony was on October 15th, you never laid hands on Ms. Jones.
I don't remember us ever talking about October 15th. I remember 4 dates. I remember March 1st. I remember July 24th. I remember June 27th, 2021. Like, yeah, I don't remember. I don't recall us ever talking about October 17th.
Okay, so isn't it true that on October 15th, you threatened to shoot up the house?
Oh, no.
No?
Oh.
Okay.
I'm sorry, ma'am. All right, it's making sense. So this is in regard to when I found out that that Maya had HPV and my son had HPV, and I want to close to go to Georgia. No, ma'am, no. I never said that.
Okay.
Whatsoever.
But you do admit on October 31st, you did punch a hole in the bedroom door.
I did because she had loaded an assault rifle. And the moment I heard it crack, my instincts kicked in, and when I opened the door, I was right. She had an assault rifle pointed at the door, and I grabbed it.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Dunbar. You said the moment you heard what?
I heard a gun racking when.
Okay.
Yeah, so when you load a M4 or M15.
Yeah,
when you
yeah. Okay, I just couldn't.
the latch for the round to go forward.
Okay, so you were standing right outside the door when you heard this?
No, I was in the living room trying to have Victor in a calm space. I had put on Gracie's Corner.
Okay, so that what Gracie's Corner is a children's
Yeah, the children.
television program?
Yes.
Okay, so you're there with him with this television program playing. Was the sound on?
Yeah, the sound's on.
Okay, and you could hear the gun through a closed door
Ma'am,
with that show playing?
Ma'am,
That's your testimony?
I've been in the U.S. Army for 9 years. If anybody's ever heard a release from a latch and a round going forward, it's pretty loud.
Okay, and your testimony is that's the reason why you broke the door?
I put a hole through it, took the weapons out, and the moment I got those weapons out, I took my son as well, and I left. Likewise, when the police came and told me to come back, that's the first thing I identified. Like, A, there are no weapons in the house. The weapons have been removed. Here are the weapons.
Let's talk a little bit about the police being called. So your testimony was that after this occurred, you grabbed your son and you left the house, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And isn't it true you actually took her phone with you?
No.
No?
Nope.
Okay. If you had left the house, I don't believe that you would have then it's actually true you don't know who called the police. Is that right?
Maya said it was her parents, but after talking to the police, like the time and space was too, they literally told me, hey, bring the child and come right back here. I hadn't even gone up the street.
Okay. So you don't know who called the police. You just know you got a telephone call from the police asking you to return with the child.
Yes, but when I got back to the apartment, they asked me what happened. They further went on, like I explained my part, and they sat us down and they both had us explain.
Okay.
And also,
and isn't it true that you took your arm and you had her in a headlock on October 31st, and you were attempting to choke her?
No.
And isn't it true that that's when she actually bit you, so you would release your arm from around her neck?
No.
So your testimony is that she came at you and bit you?
See, the thing about this is that it wasn't just like it was episodic and whatnot. She blew up, began to calm down and whatnot, and then blew up again.
So again, my question is whether
I did not have her in a headlock when she bit me. No, I didn't put her in a headlock.
Your testimony is that she just attacked you. She created all these scratches, the mark from the bee ring on your forehead.
The room was.
If you could please allow me to finish, sir. The bite mark, the marks, the claw marks under your arm. Your testimony, I just want to be clear, is that she was the aggressor. She was the one attacking you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Wouldn't you agree that these potentially could be defensive marks as well?
I don't think he's qualified to give testimony on that.
He said he's been in the Army for 9 years. He knows a little bit about
combat. I wasn't a
Mr. Dunbar.
We're moving on.
Okay. Isn't it true that Ms. Jones actually sustained an injury from a pull-up bar back in 2020 before you met her?
Not that I know of. No.
And isn't it true that back in 2020, the injury she sustains from that fall from the pull-up bar was to her head, not to her shoulder?
Well, none that I know of, ma'am. That's completely different. I don't know about that. She never told me about that.
And you weren't present when she supposedly pulled herself on the bar and fell and injured her shoulder, as you testified.
No, I was not.
You weren't present?
No, I'm going off what she told me. Ma'am.
Okay. All right.
And I went on to further believe it due to documentation.
Your testimony is that you've never committed any acts of violence against Ms. Jones?
I have defended myself now.
You have defended yourself. Okay.
Yes.
Your testimony is that you've never been the aggressor. Okay. I have no further questions.
Redirect.
Briefly, Your Honor, I think that, was it your testimony that you were present with her in 2021 when she was using the pull-up bar?
No, man, 2021 is the incident with Social Jala. Like
I'm sorry, 2022. The dates are the same, they're just different years. June 24th, 2022.
yes.
You were actually present when she fell off the pull-up bar.
No, ma'am, I was not present.
So you're saying you weren't present on that day? I just wanted to clarify it.
No.
Okay.
There when she like the pull-up bar, like no.
Okay. And you became aware of that in what way?
When she told me.
Okay. And so just for further clarification about the photograph that was on your iMac, is it your testimony that the iMac, the hard drive on the iMac is where the picture was located?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So it's not that you had Apple unlock anything. It's just that the device, the Apple device that stored that information you had, that was your device.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just for clarification, the opposing counsel asked about an incident that took place in 2020. Did you know Ms. Jones in 2020?
No.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Any other witnesses, counsel?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Evidence is closed.
Well, what I'd like to do is reserve my closing at this time. I had considered calling my client as a rebuttal witness because there's been new testimony and new allegations here that we weren't aware of until Mr. Dunbar has testified. Okay, Ms. Jones, you've heard Mr. Dunbar testify as to various facts that occurred on various dates. Specifically, he stated that on July 24th of 2022, you were injured due to falling when you were exercising with a pull-up bar. Did that occur on that date?
No, ma'am. I was never on a pull-up bar that day. I actually have messages between him and I where I told him about my arm and he was like, something, so what? I have scratches or something like that.
Okay, so you didn't injure your arm on July 24th of 2022 due to you exercising?
No, ma'am. That was a Sunday. My mom actually came in town that day and we were spending family time. So I was nowhere near a pull-up bar. Okay.
And I want to ask you, did you sustain an injury from a pull-up bar?
The only injury that I sustained was back in 2020 prior to ever knowing him. And that was to my head. And I've explained to him that that's why I was getting like migraines, like that's what they had determined was that, you know, my migraines were coming from that incident. Okay. All right, I want to just, he also, Mr. Dunbar also testified that on October 31st, that you bit his arm. Did you indeed bite his arm? I did bite his arm while he had me in a headlock. I bit him at the crease of his arm. I did not bite him in the area of the photograph that was shown, but I did bite him in order to get him off of me. But it was when he had me like this and I bit him in the crease of his arm. I didn't bite him on his hand. So you did not cause the mark, the bite mark as he testified and demonstrated in his Exhibit C? No, I did not. It was in the crease of his arm. And also from my remembering the photograph that was shown, that photograph, the background is showing in daytime. And when the police came, he's saying he took this picture prior to the police arriving. That the police came, it was already dark. It was already long dark outside. Okay. And what he also showed pictures of other injuries that he claims you caused. Specifically a mark on his forehead, a scratch on his stomach, and marks under his arm. Did you cause those marks on his body? In self-defense, yes, I did. You did, okay.
All right, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about on October 15th. You on October 15th, did you make any physical assaults on Mr. Dunbar?
I did not.
You did not. Okay. You never punched him when he was putting your son in the crib?
No, I did not punch him. I think I shared with you, I had recordings of the conversation that occurred between us. And that's the same day that he kicked the door and the entire frame came off.
Okay, right. That was on, you showed that was occurred on October 15th. Okay. I have no further questions. Your Honor. I'm trying to be brief, cut down on things. I'm through.
All right. Evidence having been closed, Ms. Feynman Sowers has indicated that she will waive opening and reserve closing. Ms. Jackson, I'll hear from you.
Your Honor, briefly, I would ask the court to not issue a protection order in this matter, mainly because my client has not been in contact with the petitioner since March of this year. He only reached out the one time to ask for visitation with his son, which he has not seen since March of this year. All of the incidents that have been discussed today have been, both sides have different recollections of what happened on that day. Is his word against hers. The only thing that seems to be consistent is the whatever the photos are showing. They could be offensive or defensive. And as we have heard, my client has his version of what happened and the petitioner has her version of what happened. However, Your Honor, one thing we cannot dispute is that my client has not been in touch with her, has not violated any of the orders that he was under. The only thing that my client did was file a legitimation petition so that he can establish a relationship with his son and to establish visitation with his son. And in an attempt to try to set that up after having not seen his son for months, Ms. Jones files this TPO. It sounds retaliatory in nature. And the fact that she filed it just days after he asked for visitation, to me, Your Honor, is indicative to that retaliation. She admitted to having already been served with a petition for legitimation. She admitted to answering it, admitted to the fact that she was, that my client was the natural father of her son. And this just seems to be an attempt to try to put a monkey wrench in the legitimation petition that is currently pending in DeKalb County to support her request to have some sort of restriction on visitation. So we believe that this TPO is the makings of retaliatory as a result of my client filing for legitimation. As the court is aware, the charges that were against my client in Massachusetts were subsequently dismissed. And through no fault of his own, he was at every court appearance. And I don't recall if she testified to being at any of the appearances, but I do know that they contacted her and she made the decision not to appear. And if I would argue that if she was that afraid of my client and knew that there were some charges that were against him, which is my understanding, Your Honor, I don't know Massachusetts law, but I did look up that statute and one of them was a felony charge. If she wanted him to be away from her or wanted him to be held accountable for those charges, she could have went up there, showed up for the hearing, and he would have been charged with a felony and he could probably still be on probation, which probably would have had a condition of staying away if that's what her intention was. But Your Honor, I don't believe that that was her intention. I don't believe that she wanted to prosecute it. And that is why they dismissed the charges against my client. And when she realized they were dismissing those charges, she wanted to come back and get a second bite at the apple. The main pendants of this actual petition is based on that March 1st incident. And then she just mentions the other ones to support that. But the main reason, and through testimony from the petitioner, that she filed this TPO was based on the March 1st, 2023 incident that occurred that was subsequently dismissed. So we would ask the court not to put a protection order on my client, preventing him, even though he has not seen her and has no desire to see her or has no desire to be within 100 yards of her. But we would ask the court not to put that restriction on him.
Your Honor, my client has credibly testified as to multiple instances, I'm tired, of domestic violence. Just because she never actually pursued criminal charges against him until March 1st of 2023, doesn't mean that these didn't occur. Mr. Dunbar admits to causing a hole in the door back on October 31st. My client has admitted to causing biting his arm, not in the space that he has indicated, but on the crook of his arm because he was choking her. Mr. Dunbar has also admitted to taking his son and just leaving. And he's not the child's legal father at this point. There is a real concern that maybe he'll try this again. But of course, since there's no legitimation, in effect, she can always seek the police assistance in having her child returned to her. She needs him to stay away from her child, to prevent any further violence or the possibility he'll just pick up his son and take off again. She didn't file this in retaliation. He filed his legitimation petition back in April. She didn't file this TPO action until late July, after the case in Massachusetts was dismissed. It's unfair to classify her as being disinterested and not wanting to pursue that because she couldn't get up to Massachusetts. She testified she didn't have enough notice to get up there for the hearing. She was an essential witness. She wasn't able to get there. So it was dismissed for want of or lack of prosecution, not because these events did not occur. I would argue that actually, I don't know how they operate in Massachusetts, but I don't believe that the police would arrest Mr. Dunbar if there wasn't any sort of cause to do so. He's denied that he has, committed any acts of violence against her, except in self-defense. I do want the court to take into consideration the size difference of these parties. I also would like the court to take into consideration that even though the one witness, Mr. Lala, came in to on behalf of the respondent, it's undisputed from both the witness and Mr. Dunbar and Ms. Jones that really Mr. Lala doesn't have any knowledge of their relationship other than what he observed back in 2021. He did admit to not being present during the entire time that the parties were together. His testimony could be biased. He's been he was a school friend since 2009. They were in Liberia together. They continued to be friends. Regardless, he still doesn't know much about their relationship. And I asked the court to extend the order of protection for a 12-month period. Thank you.
I don't think we hit the 2.5 hour mark. There are two questions that are at the core of these cases when they need to be decided, and they are pretty much as follows. Have there been acts of family violence committed in which the petitioner was, the respondent was the primary aggressor? And is this order reasonably likely to prevent future acts of violence? And both of those questions need to be answered to make a decision in a case based on the totality of the weight I'm assigning to the extensive amounts of evidence that was presented during this hearing, mostly in the form of testimony. But my finding today is that this order is not reasonably necessary under the circumstances, even if the petitioner has shown that there have been acts of violence in which the respondent is a primary aggressor. Over the last 5 months, there's been a single interaction between the parties. Over the last 9 months, there has been a single act of violence alleged over the course of this hearing. The parties now reside in different states. The only interaction has been through phone from March the 2nd to today, August 29th. And I don't believe this remedy is appropriate at this time and under these circumstances. So the legitimation case will move forward. And I will give all parties the caveat that I give in these situations, which is that despite how it feels in this moment, I have never actually said no to a protective order, but what I have said is not yet. And what that means is that should additional things happen that need to be added to a petition, be those verbal harassment, threats, violence, or anything else, then that petition can be refiled and it will be heard as soon as we are able to hear it, whether that's me or a colleague at the ready. And so understand there will be interactions between the parties moving forward as you try to navigate this legitimation case and potentially co-parent in the future. Involvement in legal processes is not harassment. And so if that's the reason that somebody is filing a petition, well, he took me to court or he tried to do this. Well, that's what the process is for. Your day in court is that day in court. Your day in court is not an additional day in court. However, statements that threaten the well-being, physical safety, family, friends, children of other people, those things are not acceptable. And so what I am optimistic of, there is a legal process that is ongoing right now. And I have two very intelligent, responsible adults who I can tell both care deeply about the child that we are discussing, even if they don't necessarily agree about what is best for that child in this moment, especially as it relates to each other. And so my hope for you both is that this process will play itself out smoothly through the court system and that there will be some sort of appropriate and acceptable outcome to that, whatever that means. So with that, parties and attorneys are excused. They have the thanks of the court. I know this was a long hearing and it is late, but in all sincerity, I am somebody who will crack a joke and engage in the occasional gallows humor, but people come to this court every day and they shout and scream at each other and they talk over each other and they interrupt. And I don't just mean the parties. It happens with parties and attorneys. It happens with attorneys and attorneys. And I truly don't mind a long hearing that is a civil hearing. And I think this absolutely qualified. And so know that despite the length of time it took, or possibly especially because of the length of time it took, just know that I'm appreciative that the parties and attorneys were able to conduct themselves the way that they did through this so that we could handle the hearing. So thank you all for your time. And I hope everybody has a good and safe evening.